to cloud. Awesome. Okay, great. All right.
All
How are
right.
you today, Greg?
Good morning. I'm doing fine, Mark. I got a little scared there for a second. We were going to connect, but we managed to. We managed to.
Yeah, I'm glad I reached out to Adriana. She,
Yeah,
um,
she's
yeah,
terrific. My publicist. She's terrific.
awesome. So, Greg, tell me, where are you at? Are you in Los Angeles?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles proper, around an area called West Adams Historic District. It's
Awesome.
area with a lot of old California craftsman style homes. I live in a house that was built in 1911.
Oh, it's beautiful there. I actually thought about living there. Yesterday, I
Did
was
you?
actually in, Vermont Avenue, like
Yes.
south, probably South Central area.
Yes.
There's this center there where we help teach kids how to skateboard through a nonprofit called Unite LA.
That's great.
And it was really fun, and it's a beautiful area. It's very underrated. I think people don't realize, hey, just outside of downtown LA, there's this, lots of great
Right.
neighborhoods.
Life actually exists aside from aside from downtown LA. There's some folks that don't want to go east of La Brea, but believe me, there is life over here. Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's a beautiful home. I'm from New York originally, Mark. So when I see these treasures out here, particularly a house built in 1911, for me, it's just a gas just seeing the history of Los Angeles and finding it in the structure and the building. So yeah, we're very pleased. My wife and I are very happy to be living here.
Wonderful. And how long have you been there?
We've been in this house 20 years now. We bought this house when things
Oh,
were
wow.
sane. So we built about 20 years ago. And don't get me wrong, an old house still requires a lot of work.
Right.
It's marked by its antiquity because it's 1911, but also requires a lot of work, as any home would. But the charm that's built into it, the wood, the stained windows, the treatments, it's just really charming. Something that we really treasure.
Oh, wonderful. So, New York,
Yeah.
did you grow up there, or
Yes, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. Hey, shout out Brooklyn. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I went to school in Manhattan. I'm a New Yorker through and through.
Wonderful. Yeah, I lived in New York for 5 years. I went to
Did you?
Columbia.
Oh yeah,
So I
uptown.
loved Harlem. And then I worked on Wall Street. So I was down in, more south part of Manhattan. And then I lived in Jersey City.
Oh
But I
yeah,
would travel to Brooklyn to get Grimaldi's pizza.
sure. You know
Yeah,
about
my
Grimaldi's
favorite.
Pizza. I got to tell you, not to be elitist, but I'm so glad I was born and raised in New York. There's just something about that New York tempo and that New York determination and grit and hustle. Not that LA's bad at all, because listen, I live out here. I've been out here for 20 some odd years now, but
Mhm.
there's something about coming from New York. And also my concentration on the arts. The arts were everywhere: dance, music, museums. It was everywhere.
Mhm.
So I was lucky to be able to take part in this cultural melting pot that was New
Mhm.
York City, which I think helped guided my artistic choices because I was exposed to so much. It had so much to offer. So even though I'm not living there now, and I don't know if I'll ever live there again, I'd always want to work there. But there's something about New York. There's something about that. Don't you find the energy, the
Oh,
hustle?
yes. New York shaped me to become a person that hustled and got stuff done, and
That's
also to
exactly what I'm saying.
connect with so many different types of people and cultures. And
That's
that's
right.
something in LA. I think we're just a little more siloed here.
Oh yeah, because we have so geographically we're so huge. You have to get in a car to drive anywhere. In New York, I mean, you're outside high rent areas, low rent areas. I mean, everyone's really inside, right beside each other, and you're all walking. You're not in a car. You're actually walking on a subway or on a bus, which rapid transit or whether it's bus. So there was something about the exposure to all that that I believe sort of helped shape my artistic my artistic guidelines.
So I wonder how COVID has affected that now, especially with all of this, social distancing. And, obviously in the past, it was an everyday occurrence in New York to be packed like sardines in a subway train.
Yeah.
Now that's gone. How do you
Yeah.
think? Have you been back to New York?
No, in fact, I'm scheduled to go back later this year. I think it's going to take years to recover. I mean, the good news is that things like Broadway are coming back. I think
Good.
September, Broadway shows are reopening. I think it's going to take some years for, at least economically, it will definitely take years for the city to come back. I think because it was hit so hard in the beginning, there's kind of a trauma because New York Unfortunately, they're the ones that had the refrigerator units right outside of a
Mhm.
hospital. It was just terrible. However, it's beginning to come back. It's beginning to come back. I have friends who are still working there. Life is happening
Mhm.
again. But I think before we gain an ease again, and it gets back economically to what it was right before the pandemic, it was doing really well. I had been in New York in January 2020. I was shooting a series there,
Mhm. Oh, okay.
and I was shooting series out there, and it was just great. I was doing everything, and then of course I got back in February, and I think the hit the it happened
In
in terms of,
March.
yeah. March,
Mhm.
exactly. It was March. So I sort of dodged a bullet, I like to think. But New York is always going to thrive. It's just going to take time after this trauma. It's going to take
Mhm.
time for the United States. It's going to take time for the world to sort of, because I think COVID is going to be with us for a while as well. So it's not
Yeah.
like we can shake it off now and go, okay, whew, that was a dumpster fire of a year, 2020. Let's move on. No, I don't think it's going to be that easy. So, but I think it will thrive again. Just like out here, the film and television industry and theaters are
Mhm.
reviving again and coming back in other industries. It's just going to be slow. And again, people's confidence is going to have to come back so they can sit next to or near someone in a theater again.
Right. So I actually wanted to, that's a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you about, COVID has really changed the film and TV industries. And I know there's a new, in the past, you could count on major money coming from movie theater goers. And these days now, with everyone so afraid, companies like Netflix have been rising up to
Wow.
become
And how?
more
And how?
right.
Netflix, you can't throw a
Mhm.
stone in LA and not have a Netflix series that's premiering or already running, you know?
So what are your thoughts on that? And how are you as a actor, as a stakeholder in the industry navigating those waters?
Yeah, I think it was coming anyway. I think streaming was happening. I guess the pandemic exacerbated everything. People were much safer to stay at home, and the media moguls responded. But look, we were heading toward streaming
Right.
and pay-per-view and those things anyway. I mean, the platforms are amazing. At any given time, like I go out a lot as an actor auditioning. I can't tell you how many new shows I see from Netflix and HBO Max and Hulu, and I'm always like, my God, all these are new shows. But I think that was beginning to happen before the pandemic. I think people being able to stay at home. Look, it's hard to get around LA. It's hard to jump in a car and go somewhere and get parking and pay for a ticket. Now, I will always
Right.
love going to a theater. I think there's something magical about being in this larger than life screen. I would always love to. But, for families or whatnot, it's easier to pop some popcorn, on your stove, to
Mhm.
have it's the ease and the choice of the consumer. It's the choice the consumer has. So I think theaters will continue to, but I think we're changing the paradigm anyway. Since the advent of
Mhm.
cable 15, 20 years ago to where we are now, part of it's technology. You can't hold it back. It's happening. It's nice to
Right.
have Wonder Woman in your home for 20 25 bucks and not have to jump in a car, find parking, get a babysitter or whatever it was, or take the
Mhm.
kids, buy all the stuff. It's nice. So I think that's the way we have to look at it, that it can't be this, oh boy, I think it has to be, well, we're going to have to embrace it because, when
Mhm.
these innovations come, look at like these, what
Mhm.
do they call them now? The smartphones. I
Right.
couldn't live without my
Right.
smartphone. Everything is on. Everyone gets in contact with me. My agent, my managers. It's all through my smartphone. And could you imagine 10 years ago relying as much on your
Mhm.
smartphone, which is really a mini computer,
Right.
than anything else? So I think the industry is naturally going to evolve and change. The paradigm is changing, but I think it's important. What's even more important is how it's changing in terms of people of color. I think 2020 was a huge wake up call with the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, even the Me Too era. I think now that's some systemic change. I mean, the way we're looking at white supremacy and white privilege, the way we're
Mhm.
trying to redefine what that is all about. How do we be more equitable, inclusive? That to me is it's so very exciting. I see changes in all across the lines now. I see change, unless organizations that probably thought they were part of the solution, maybe asking themselves, well, maybe we were part of the problem. Just
Mhm.
hiring one black director or one black writer or one Asian,
Right.
that I don't think that's just I don't think that storyline. I mean, look, even sports teams are getting rid of offensive names to our indigenous brothers and sisters. I mean, they're beginning to stop and say, wait a minute, this is always the term in the vision of white supremacy and white privilege. We need to change that narrative. We need to change that up. So that to me is what since the civil rights, and I was a child of the civil rights movement, I've never seen this kind of the
Yeah, definitely.
tsunami of social change.
Mhm.
LGBTQ plus, our Asian brothers and sisters, Black Lives Matter. It's exciting time to be in. It's an awkward time, which is okay, but
Mhm.
it's exciting.
I definitely see that, Greg. And, obviously that is the overarching thing that's going on with our society, a shift. But I question some of the solutions because I still feel, and I totally agree with you. I am not a fan of the tokenizing in the past where you have almost like, hey, blacks, Asians, you go in a corner. And I
Right.
think it's even worse for Asians in the movie industry
Oh,
and the entertainment industry. And I'd love for
yes.
you to speak to that, first of all. Like, what is, because I still feel Asians are very underrepresented in film. We had that little moment in 2018 with Crazy Rich Asians that
Right.
was a blockbuster hit. But ever since then, Asians are tokenized, fetishized, and also invisibilized, if that's a word.
Yeah, good one though. I
And
don't know if it's a
so,
word, but damn it, it serves a purpose.
yeah,
It serves a purpose. Well, but I think what's happening now, which I hadn't before, they're being called out for it in ways they hadn't been called out before. They're saying, wait a minute, why isn't that character that's supposed to be where from South Pacific and there's no Asian characters? Or
yeah,
where's that supposed to be representative of? I hate to say it happened to Lin-Manuel Miranda when he just did In the Heights. I mean, we had Dominicans up in Harlem, Bronx, but there were no dark skinned Dominicans. And then the swell of
right,
controversy. So I think now how you proceed now is being watched in a way to say, wait a minute, why aren't there any more Asian brothers and sisters and actors and performers and DPs aren't in that show? So it's not just performative now. It's not just saying we have one. Now it's saying, well, the criteria is much more circumspect now. Well, let's see what you have. How many of your crew members are Asia? How many of your decision makers and your even boards? I know boards now, people asking, well, how much of your board is made up of females, people of color?
hmm,
So they're being called out now. I mean, there was an amazing document last year called We See You White Theater, where these really just high profile actors, directors, all kinds wrote a letter to theater saying, calling for a kind of change in terms of what we're putting on this stage, the writers you hire,
sure.
the directors you hire, the designers you hire, the material you choose. It was a really blistering document, written very, very well. Say, we see you white theater. I know theaters have taken that now and using almost like a book to say, yeah, well, our board makeup is what? Our
Hmm.
audience is what? So I think now there's a certain kind of scrutiny and introspection, looking at it that might cause to change. That might, because it's not just enough to talk about the change.
Yes.
We have, and if we don't see the change, well, then what are the repercussions? Well, then we're not going to go to those shows. We're not going to patronize those shows. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and Greg, I know that's already happening. I think we have a public that is much more careful and also willing to hold back their dollars should they see, such as a story like you said, the South Pacific story. I think there was a Disney film that was going to base it on a South Pacific character, and then they wanted to whiteify it.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I thought that was great that there was enough of a public outcry. But my question here, you talked about hiring and more crew members and board members. What point are we tokenizing even there and saying, okay, we want more inclusion, but we do need people who are qualified. So
Absolutely.
what is the balance there? Because you don't want to just put someone in because they're black or because they're
Right.
Asian and then not have the skill sets or the experience needed to execute quality work and quality products.
Yeah, I
What's the
think they're
balance
there.
there?
I think you need to go out and find them. I think you need to go out and train them. I think it's one thing to say, "Oh, we can't find the." There was something in theater called, was it the Kilroys, where it's some artistic director somewhere along the line saying, "Oh, listen, we would love to put on more plays by female playwrights, but there aren't any." And there was another outcry, and there was this list created called the Kilroy list with all these female playwrights and all around the country signed on and showed what plays they had. I think we need an accounting like that. I think we need to say, okay, let's start with 50%. but go out and find them. Don't think they're just because they've been excluded for so long. They're not going to come and put a paper at your door. You're going to have to go to places to find them because already they're so historically underrepresented. They tend not to go that route. Well, I'm not going to apply for that executive position because they only hire white males. Why should
That's
I hire it? So it's a trauma. We're almost traumatized to believe, well, why should I waste my time and go through HR when we know they're going to hire a female or a Caucasian female? So I think the corporations and the companies need to do a hell of a better outreach. Look, if we can send somebody to the moon, we can do a better outreach in finding Asian and BIPOC brothers and sisters who are qualified, who are coming out of colleges and schools, and then also create your own training programs as well.
I agree with
Because
that.
there's no generational, and we know in certain guilds, the father passes to the son, to the mother. There's a
Right.
generational thing. If you're part of this union, then that son. But we don't have that. We have never been allowed to have a system of being able to pass along generational knowledge. So you need to create training programs. So for the executives and the writers of the future that are BIPOC, you have to create your own training because we're so totally underrepresented. And we don't even think in terms of going that direction. We've almost traumatized. So yeah, I think they need to do much more in terms of outreach. Much more.
So Greg, there's the proverbial they, right? It's the other people, but I believe you're being part of the solution because you have a nonprofit that is around promoting diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
What specifically are you doing? I'd love to hear about that and write about what you're doing.
Well, it comes from the narratives we create. We make sure that we always like to say vast stories from the African diaspora. And when we say that, I mean all those who are part of the African diaspora that might have gone to Europe, that might have gone to anywhere in the United States. So we look for playwrights that write from that perspective. We're also very aware of who we hire. If we're hiring 4 playwrights to do something, we make sure 2 of them are female, or at least 3 of them are female. We make sure that they are Asian or Black or indigenous people. I mean, you have to be very, very aware. Okay, so now we have to show that. We have to represent that in how we're hiring. So our narratives and ours are because we know when we have different voices in the room and we have different stories being told, it legitimizes who we are. So we actively go and recruit and look for diversity when we do our programming. We say, okay, so what story hasn't been told a lot from the people in the neighborhood? What would they like to hear about? We did something on sex trafficking, one of our plays that was commissioned about a year or 2 ago. We did something sex trafficking. So because that's happened so much I didn't know West Coast was like the center of it. So we wrote a play, but again, we made sure we partnered with other organizations, NCMEC, a Center for Exploited and Missing Children, to get information from them. So we're very consciously aware when we make our choices to be inclusive and to ask ourselves, are we going to be about being as diverse as we can and asking these underrepresented people to come on and work for us? You have to start with that.
That's wonderful. What's the name of your nonprofit, Greg?
It's called Lower Depth Theater, LOWER -depth, DEPTH.com. If you want to go to Lower Depth Theater, and it's lowerdepth.com.
Lower Depth.
Lower -depth, DEPTH.com, and you'll find all about, and you'll see on our website, and please visit us, sign up for our newsletter. You'll see the kind of, during the pandemic, we hired 10 playwrights to write 10-minute plays from around the country.
Oh, okay. So you guys hired playwrights to write plays.
We hired directors. They were 10-minute plays, but we didn't want to just go dormant during the pandemic and say, well, there's no theater. We just have to wait. No, I think audiences even more crave for voices and stories.
They're bored.
Yeah, they're bored and they wanted to hear.
Did you do this over online or Zoom?
Yeah, we did it online. Yep, we did it on Zoom. And we
Wonderful.
commissioned 10 playwrights from around the country, and we got it was one of our best programs in terms of how people attended it. We enlarged our audience, and we hired the playwrights, we hired the directors, we hired technicians to help us put it on. So you can be very cognizant in terms of how you're hiring. And again, what's the conversation you want to have with your audience? So corporations and boards need to say, do we want to engage our indigenous population? Do we want to engage our Asian brothers and sisters, our Black brothers and sisters? What's the conversation you want to have with them? Let's start one and not trust that what we put up is what they want to see. Take surveys, for Christ's sake, if you have to, but ask them, what is a story that you never see on our stages that you would like to see represented?
Greg, of the 10 playwrights you did, which one was your favorite? And what was, in a nutshell, what was the story? And why do you love it?
That's like my favorite children. It was like asking, well, there
Yeah.
was one writer, he wasn't even really a playwright, he's a kind of a sci-fi writer. It's
Mhm.
terrific, Delane McDuffie, and he wrote a play post-Trump about Trump being, there was a coup and Trump is elected king and he
Mhm.
institutes slavery all over again.
Mhm.
Wow. Again, it was a 10-minute play and it was totally science fiction, but we were so traumatized during the time of that president. So what if this happens? What if somehow the government is overthrown? And this is way before January 6th happened and the government was almost overthrown. What if the government is overthrown and Trump is installed as king? What would he do to people of color? And the first thing he does is institute slavery again. Oh my God, I gotta tell you, it was a wild ride. But it was funny. I mean, some of it was very, very funny. But the thing about it that made it so eerie was that it wasn't beyond the realm of something happening. It wasn't
Mhm.
beyond the realm of it because people treated him like a king. Oops, did I lose you?
Oh,
Oh,
that's me. Sorry.
okay. I mean, so it just was stretching this fear that we were all having of, will he be elected again? And if he does, what will he do? That was
Mhm.
one of my favorite plays because while it was funny at the same time, it was eerily kind of resonant in that he behaved. We knew he loved autocrats and dictators. We knew that. We all knew that he loved those kinds of people. So what if he was elected king and overthrew the government? And what would he do with people of color? So
Mhm.
that story, because it opened this, it sort of opened the vein of saying, wow,
So
where's
it
this
certainly
country
was
going?
relevant to, the political climate at the time. But
Yes.
one would ask that over the years, Hollywood has become overly political in that it's, very slanted to one side. There's a lot of people that were previously moviegoers that are maybe conservative and Republican. How do you um, get to everyone, not just, one side of the aisle?
I never understood how American stories should be one-sided. I mean, to me, part of talking about the Asians here and blacks here and indigenous people here, for some reason we bought into this notion that legitimate stories have to be Caucasian. I'm not saying you have to be Caucasians, but I like to embrace an American story has to involve all the immigrants that came here and made this a great country.
Of
If
course.
Republicans want to think that somehow make America great again has to be make America white again. If that's somewhere some
I don't think
subversive
that's the
thought.
case because I actually covered a lot of rallies during the time from the MAGA rallies, and I saw there were a lot of minorities that all were and as we saw with the election results, there was a lot of minorities that supported Trump more than they did the last election the first time around. So they actually supported him more, and he made a big play to the Black community
He did.
with
It didn't quite work, but he did.
yeah.
He did. But I think that again, we have to expand our knowledge of our definition of what an American story is. I don't think presenting a story from the point of view of the indigenous people or LGBTQ plus. I think that should be embraced as a very American. It's not offensive. It's just part of the pastiche of America. That's part of the fabric of America. So letting those people have their voices, it's not like we're trying to beat back conservatives, but part of America, whether you want to
Mhm.
acknowledge it or not, is you have to. I mean, look at the LGBTQ movement. Amazing where it's come from. I mean, before it was just literally a closeted kind of
Right.
lifestyle, and now it's embraced. I mean, it's accepted. So yeah, okay. To some, that might be, oh God, I don't believe. However, that is part of the American framework. It's
Of
part of
course.
it's part of our history. So I'm for all folks being represented. I'm not trying to favor one story over another. I'm just saying, in fairness, we all came here, our ancestors, our immigrant forebears. We came here and made America. Therefore, everyone's story is valid. Not one more than the other, but be
Mhm.
truthful about it. Everyone's story, in terms of how they function in America and how America was built, it's valid. That to me
Yeah.
is only fair.
And I think a lot of Republicans wouldn't disagree with that. I think that's not necessarily the case. I think the issue is more Hollywood is slanted and very overly anti-Trump in their message. So I think and I actually was at Outfest for the
Oh, good.
LGBTQ, and I reviewed a movie just 2 days ago, and I felt that LGBTQ movie had only one black character, and
Hmm.
he was only on screen for 30 seconds basically.
Mhm.
And then the Asian character Margaret Cho
Oh yeah,
was
love her work.
portrayed in a stereotypical manner. So I
Mm,
actually feel that I think even in some of the movies that say are supposed to be diverse end up ironically becoming undiverse. What are
mhm.
your thoughts on that, and how do we represent, for example, LGBTQ does not just mean white LGBTQ.
Nope.
There's black, there's Asian, there's Hispanic, and none of those ever came out in a story that was based in New York. So New York, and you and I have lived New York, is diverse as all get out,
You better believe it.
right?
Yes,
But
yes,
yet
yes.
every single person was white pretty much in that friend circle.
Mhm. I think there's, when I say EDI, I truly mean, I think we all have to go through a re-education with EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. There are times we think we're being inclusive and diverse and equitable, and
Mhm.
we're not. So I do think as a result of 2020, not just people of color and not just Caucasians, but we all have to rethink, what does it mean to be equitable, diverse, and include? Just like you were saying, Margaret Cho, who I think is brilliant. She's a brilliant comedian. But
It was great.
she was represented in a stereotypical way. So it's almost
Yeah.
like we all need to stop and go, okay. And there's training going on. I mean, there's actual training. My union, my stage union, SAG, there's all these organizations now that are bringing in counselors, because sometimes there's an unformed bias. There's an unconscious bias that we all, that in many ways, our conditioning and over the years that so while we think we're being inclusive and diverse and equitable, we're not really.
We may actually be being the opposite. And that's what
Absolutely.
I felt in that movie. It was the Asian character Margaret Chose was being condescended to
Hmm.
throughout the whole movie, and I thought that was really one dimensional. And it's sad because even the way that the writing they wrote the character, she was she was basically the butt of the joke,
Ah, see,
and that
yeah,
is not
yeah, yeah,
that is not
yeah.
inclusive or diverse.
And
So
sometimes it takes people to wake up and to do that. Because again, I don't think Lin-Manuel Miranda, when he made Dominicans in Bronx, meant to make it as in terms of colorism. Why weren't there any dark Dominicans up there? Again, I think he had the best of intentions. I think he was doing terrific work. I respect him mightily, but did it ever occur to, oh yeah, all my characters seem to be light skinned, light toned, and what happens
right.
to the darker skinned people? So there really is a re-education that we're all going to have to, even artists, that we're all going to have to go through to really ask, well, that might have been an unconscious bias. Maybe that's all you've ever seen or all you've ever recognized, but you see, as a result of doing that, this happens. Because I tell you this, even now for me as a stage director, the pronoun thing, I'm just beginning to understand now. What's your pronouns? He, him, his. Well, his pronouns are they and them. Oh, okay. And I really want to get it. And I apologize right off the bat. I say it might take me a little while, but people are redefining themselves in ways that I think are healthy. It's just that it takes a re-education to understand and to apply it. So maybe in that case, they didn't think far enough, didn't go further enough, saying, well, now you're pigeonholing an Asian performer in a role that is the butt of the joke. Yeah, did you get that? So again, it's going to be an awkward phase. There will be an awkward phase where people even of goodwill will stumble, which I totally accept, but truly giving ourselves over to asking, do I have an unconscious or conscious bias toward certain men, women, heights,
Mhm.
color, body build? I mean, we all harbor them, but it's when they start defining, when we start deciding who people are as a result of it, that's ill-conceived. That's something we have to
I
sort of.
think there's a bottom line here, and it's that hero arcs really should include more diverse stories. That we should not, uh, think that it's okay to just have a black and Asian token just
Absolutely.
hanging out
Oh,
in the background, and that we
absolutely.
should hear those stories. And I think
Absolutely.
that's where the need is more
Absolutely.
than anything else, because movies have an impact on large audiences, or even deep impacts to smaller groups of niche diverse groups, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
having the hero arc in these stories, and so I like what you're doing a lot with getting the African diaspora stories out in your playwrights. I think that's really
And also it's a way to actually enact what we're talking about. I mean, okay, so let's
right.
reach out, let's get those stories. It's not enough to say we'd like to do it, but we actively
Let's do it.
went looking for playwrights from around the country. One thing about Zoom, we could employ people anywhere, I mean, in the world. We could go to London, to Paris. Africa, it doesn't matter because just from the time difference. So we got diverse voices, but you have to commit it's not something happenstance. It has to be a very direct and applicable policy of half our board or a quarter of our board or half our writers or a quarter of our writers are going to be this. LGBTQ, female, BIPOC, whatever you do. So again, it's an exciting time because all these questions are being asked and people are trying to answer them. But it's also going to be a very awkward kind of, well, was my behavior typical of? And sometimes
I think the guilt part is counterproductive. I think,
is.
I think we really should move forward with actually making strong, deep relationships with diverse people and getting their stories out there like you're doing. So I'm really a big fan of that. I hope that we can do more of Asian stories because a lot of people just lump Asians in as like Asian, but there's Vietnamese, there's Filipino, there's Chinese, there's dynamics.
Absolutely.
And just like African American shouldn't just be one, there's South Africans, there's Nigerians, there's Ghanaians. I mean, there's so much.
Senegalese, absolutely, and exactly. And the more we highlight all those stories, the better off we are in terms of understand. We really come to understand each other. Then let's break down that there's one group and try and understand the differences. It's the differences that actually make us stronger. I think I
agree.
How each
I would love to work with you on that. We should, take what you're doing on the Asian community and get those stories out. So,
well, I have to give a plug here to East West Players, which is probably the oldest Asian American theater company. I know Snehal Desai, who is the artistic director, but boy, they do some amazing work in terms of getting playwrights and stories that they put up. So, this organization, East West Players, if you're here in Los Angeles, if you're on the West Coast, please support them. Please support Snehal Desai, who is their artistic director, and the stories that they put up, the stories they want to share, really recognizes all of the differences in the Asian community vis-a-vis the United States. So there are organizations working it, but they need support. Again, they tend to be, you don't know them as much, and you should. They've been around for at least 30 years, I think East West Players have existed. So
I've definitely heard of them.
Yeah, we all have to make an effort to reach out and say, well, what are they doing this season? What are their stories? Let me see what kind of donation, how can I be helpful to a company that's doing the very thing we are talking about, Mark, which are presenting these amazingly vast and different stories, and they deserve our support. So that's a shout out to them. Go online, look up East West Players. Snehal Desai is the artistic director, and man, what they've been doing for 30 years and what they continue to do, even during the pandemic and beyond, is I didn't know this much about the Asian community. It really was. It's really being patronized by that theater. My being able to support them, I've learned so much more. So I think that's the model we're talking about in terms of supporting those people.
And then I wanted to pivot over to human trafficking. You had mentioned that. I've actually been a community organizer in terms of bringing awareness to that. And I actually worked with one of my good friends, Conroy Cantor, who did a movie called Trafficked, starring Ashley Judd, back in 2017. And after the movie's run, we got it out to the communities. And my favorite one was when we put it out in San Bernardino, where San Bernardino is one of our poorest cities in the country. And it's also a hub for human trafficking. It's mostly young Black women and Black men that are put in this trade. And it's really kind of a hub where they go in and out, and the motels in the local area are the vessel for that. Yes. How do what exactly have you done? Because you had mentioned that earlier, and I made a note here to come back to that.
Thank you. Well, everything we do is trying to move our audience to activism. Not only do we present a play, but we also present sources they can go to if they want to find out more. Or so a play, if you come to a Low Depth Theater and see a play of ours, let's say about human sex trafficking, it's not enough to just feel about it when you see the story, which is they're just amazing, sad stories, but also to provide you with some information and background on how you can become an activist. If it touches you in any way, if you knew someone, if this just shocks the hell out of you, well, then reach out to NCMEC, that organization. You reach out there. So we try and provide entities where once you've seen the product, if it moves you in any way, we want to move you to activism. We want to move you to say, well, let me make a call and see if I can get some more material or host a meeting or talk to someone that can. So all point of our art, the art that we do, is to move our audience to a level of activism where they're just not seeing it and go home after 2 hours or 90 minutes, go, wow, that was a moving, beautifully rendered story, but saying, I can't believe that the 13, 14-year-old girls and boys are being trafficked and they're out on the streets. And that's not right. I mean, because most of us well-meaning human beings are going to be appalled by that. But don't just be appalled. Maybe make a phone call, jump online on the web and find out about organizations, boots on the ground who are actively combating it, actively fighting against pulling young people into that kind of lifestyle. So we are very, very, very aware of the activism aspect of our work and how we provide with every production, with every reading, sources, resources you can go to delve further into whatever we present.
Greg, do you actually have one of the playwrights focus on the sex trafficking? Because
yes, we commissioned a playwright named Tira Palmquist, Tira Palmquist. She wrote a play called Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor, which we presented at the Zephyr Theater about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it focused on how young women are pulled into sex. I mean, how they recruited, how they pulled in, what happens. It was a beautifully written story. Again, it's not just facts.
I want to watch this.
It's called Safe Harbor. I think the script is published now, but what a beautiful
And
story.
where can I find this, Greg? Is this online?
It's online. Yes, you could find it online. If you look up Safe Harbor by Tira, Tira Palmquist, Palmquist. Sorry, Tira, I hope I spelled it right. But it was a commission that we gave her to write specifically about sex trafficking and how prolific it is and how these young people are pulled into this life and efforts to pull them out of the life. So yeah, we actually mounted an entire full length. There's another 10 minutes. This was a full length play and it was really beautifully done, Mark. We had designers, light, sound, costumes, set. We had actors we cast, and it was just a beautiful, and I can't tell you, and afterwards, something else we do, we provide talkbacks as well. So in the run of a show, we have certain dates where we have a talk back with the audience. You'd be surprised how many people will stay around. We'll try and get a representative from one of the organizations. I've never heard so many people just share stories. Right. Find out. It's almost the best part of the program to me. The play is good, and wonderful and moving, but
the panel's even better.
It's even better because people trust and say things and ask questions that are so educational. So we also do talkbacks in the course of a run of a show. We will have certain nights. Sometimes we bring in experts or people who are more knowledgeable than we are, because we don't pretend to that we know everything about sex trafficking, but organizations have been doing it for 20, 25 years who are more than willing to come in one night, sit down, take audience questions, talk about the characters. It's again, talkbacks and activism, the emphasis on how to make you an activist in your own way.
That is exactly what we did when we showed the movie. It was a 2-hour movie, but people stayed around for another 2 hours to talk to. We had law enforcement, we had psychologists, we had nonprofits and community leaders talk about their experience.
Isn't that wonderful?
How to pick up on signs and all of that. So I'd love to partner with you on that.
It's funny because I remember how charged that is when people who have shared a common experience, which is a movie or a play, can get together. And as you said, 2 hours after, and they're still there. They don't want to go home. They want to hear more about it. That's when you can get people's hearts because they've opened up now. You've opened their hearts. So now's a great time to say, okay, here's some information from law enforcement. Here's some information from organizations that do this professionally. That's when you got them. When you open somebody's heart, not just their head, you got them.
I'm so with you there. Can you repeat that? If we open someone's heart, I'm going to quote you on this.
Oh, sure. I say it's not just, now of course I remember that. If you open someone's heart, not just the head, then you got them. Then you can suggest activist things to do, but it has to be more than the head. It's got to be the heart. Because you open the heart, you got them.
I got it. And the last thing I'm going to ask on your activism, I noticed in the bio from your publicist that you do stuff with animal cruelty. Can you speak on ending animal cruelty? What specifically have you done? I'd love to.
I love animals. In fact, I'm laughing because we just adopted a golden retriever from Korea. He flew 5,500 miles. His name is Woody. We picked him up from LAX last Sunday. This will be a week, but there are amazing people who are working to prevent animal cruelty, not just the ASPCA and your local branch, not the national, just local branch, but it's so easy to get involved with helping. You can help foster. You can help in terms of adoption. You can help not just writing a check, but being a foster parent. I mean, animals for me, I have to have animals around. I have to have my dogs
Oh
around.
yeah, me too.
You see, they just
I have three
chilling.
dogs.
Oh, wow. You're
And
good.
I just rescued a pug. So
Oh,
yeah.
really? Congratulations. That's really quite wonderful. Yeah, there's so many organizations, whether depending on the dog, it could be a pug, it could be a golden retriever. There's all these rescues other than national. There's all these rescues, and you can help in such small ways, even if it's walking the dog, even walking them or hosting or fostering them or just giving money. I find a society, how we treat our animals is a reflection of who we are as a society. How we treat those those sad, you know, vulnerable creatures, how we treat them. So I volunteer as much as I can. I'll do whatever I can to help. And I have to say, there's some well-established organizations. Whatever dog you like, just go online and find out if they have a rescue, because they probably take care of just that dog. I've done Golden Retriever Rescue. There's so many. This one was called the Joey and Bailey Foundation, and they take animals from Korea, South Korea, fly them over and get them adopted. So Woodrow or Woody is my latest adoption, and these women usually do it for just among themselves, no money. So Joey and Bailey Foundation, or whether it's Pug Rescue, Golden Retriever Rescue, German Shepherd Rescue, just get on and support them in whatever way you can. How we treat our animals is a reflection of our kindness or our generosity as human beings.
I love it. I love it. So thanks for that plug. I'm going to check them out.
Joey and Bailey, yeah.
Joey and Bailey, yeah.
Foundation. That's correct.
And do they specialize in golden retrievers, or do they do
no? I mean, everything from terriers to poodles to any animal that's being mistreated, or unfortunately, there's a lot of puppy mills in Korea. Any animal that's being mistreated, they rescue them, and then they put you through an arduous process. It's not as easy as saying, "Hey, I want to do." No, they want to see your social media presence. They want you to do a tape of your home. So it's not. It's like adopting a child, which it should be. I mean, it's arduous, and if you get through it, then you meet the dog at the airport or whatever the animals. But
that's so cute.
It's not exclusive to golden retrievers. It includes all types of dogs.
I love it. I love it. Let's pivot over to your family now. I know being a working actor for so many years on some very intensive TV and film productions, how do you balance that out? And I know you have a young daughter now.
Not so young anymore. She just graduated from college. So we're still stunned at that, but young, she's 22.
You're an empty nester now.
Exactly right. You're so right. I've heard that term before, but now I feel it because she lives on her own now. But please, I interrupted you. What were we going to say, Mark?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's how did you balance that out over the years? Because I'm sure there's a lot of working family mom and dad actors out there that are trying to do what you're doing. What's your tip to them, and how did you balance that, especially with your dedication to having a strong family unit?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, find the right partner. I mean, find someone who shares the values you have, who foresees the kind of future that you want to have. Know the person you're going to marry, seriously, because you have to have an active, willing partner who sees the same for you, wants your dream as much as you, and you have to want their dream, whatever their dream is, law school, whatever. You have to have a partner that's flexible and willing to do those things, because if there's no cooperation and no flexibility, it ain't gonna work. I've been married 25 years now, and I'm telling you, is my partner, who is also an actress, the way we negotiate things. What was great about being an actor is I got to spend a lot of time with my daughter when she was a baby, because I didn't have a set every day go in from 9 to 5 office job. So there were, other than when I was booked to go shoot something or work on something, I had all this time, and I'm so glad, because I didn't realize, it's a cliche, Mark, but they grow fast. Oh my God, they grow so fast.
You blink in there.
It seems like she was a baby and now she's in college. So I find a partner that shares the same value system that you do, that has as much passion for what you do and flexibility. You have to find a mature human being, an adult.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't work. It doesn't. You both have to want the same things for yourselves and your family. My family has anchored me this entire time. I'm a better director and actor because I'm a family person. Everything I do is really with the backdrop of, I have such a support system in my wife and daughter and dogs. I have such a support system that enables me. But really, it's not about flattery. It's not about giving up more. It's about finding a partner who wants the same things you do, and
I really
respecting
like
them.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what
wise
made
words of wisdom.
my marriage work, and that's what continues to make it work.
Hmm. Great. And I also know you spent some time in UCLA teaching. Is that
USC.
correct?
Oh, be careful now. Be
USC.
careful. You're
Yeah,
crossing the line
I
now.
said that just to trigger you.
Go. Hold on
So,
now. You're talking about Bruins? No, you got to talk
are
about
you a Bruin?
Trojans. No, I'm a Trojan. I'm a Trojan all the way. I teach. Yeah, I teach at USC School of Dramatic Arts. And boy, those kids inspire. No, not kids, the young people. They inspire me. I see myself about 20, 25, 30 years ago, or probably more, when I was ardent about becoming a performer and I wanted to learn with the craft and the technique. They inspire me. How they're so fearless. I mean, these young people who are still trying to get themselves together. Sometimes they have to go to very vulnerable places in our training as an actor. There's times they have to go to very vulnerable, painful places. And wow, they're so courageous. They're so ardent about getting the craft and the technique. So teaching there and I direct there also. It really inspires me. I will always be involved with young people who are in the industry. I want to be involved with them.
That's wonderful. And so, yeah, let's wrap this up. Do you
Sure.
have any projects that you're working on right now? I know, God, you have been your IMDb and your resume is just like woo.
Yeah,
So
well,
long.
because I've been lucky. I'm about to go to New Mexico to do a film called Impossible. Brandon Lewis is a producer and one of the leads in it. I worked out for them before. I did a feature called Jericho with them many years ago. So in about a week, I'm heading to New Mexico, which I've never been to. I'm really excited in the desert to do a feature film it's about this morbidly obese Black man who realizes he's got to do something to lose the weight or he's shortening his life. He's morbidly obese and he's just developed type 2 diabetes. And that was his wake-up call to say, you know what, I've got to find out. And what's great about it is not just the story, but also the backdrop is many African Americans suffer from type 2 diabetes. It's one of the killers and one of the leading diseases in our community. So it's also a way of outreach to the community saying, this is a way you can change this lifestyle. Because again, morbidly obese at that young an age and that type 2 diabetes is terrible. It's a terrible, terrible disease. It will kill you. So, but it's an uplifting story, but it's about how he goes about to actually lose about 100 pounds and find a healthier lifestyle. And I'm one of the coaches that work with him, the lead. I'm one of the coaches that help him find an alternative to this obviously destructive lifestyle he has. I'm starting rehearsals on a play this week at USC, a beautiful play. It's called Miss Julie Freedom Summer, about Alabama in 1964. So I'll be directing that by Stephen Sachs, by a director writer named Stephen Sachs. I'll be directing that. And I just finished a play called The Duat at CTG, the Marc Taper. They had a digital stage. And so we did a one-man show at the Kirk Douglas Theater called The Duat. Roger Q. Mason was the playwright, and what a workout, because again, I've never done a solo performance piece. So the fact that there's nobody else on stage, it's just you, but it was one of the best experiences I had. So I continue to get really quality projects, and I'm very grateful because, boy, at this age, at this point in the industry, to have meaningful, fulfilling projects, it just means a lot to me. And thank you for your interest in just interviewing and talking to me about my life. Because people wouldn't know unless we have folks like you who would say, well, let's talk to Gregg Daniels, see what he's all about. Seriously. So thank you. Thanks for the exposure as well, Marc.
Thanks for all the work you're doing, and that's enabled us to have a quality discussion. And I'm going to do a write-up on this and this video, this Zoom thing. Hopefully, if technology cooperates, it'll be up on our YouTube.
I understand.
So.
Well, but you said something very important, a quality conversation. There are conversations I have sometimes that are just so peripheral, but I thought this really was a quality conversation. I was allowed to share with you things that, again, I could always give a little, and then I did this, but it's nice to have an adult have a quality conversation about issues that are meaningful to both of us. So I thank you. I thank you for your intelligence in terms of curating this interview.
I am honored. And Gregg, we'll stay in touch and, through your publicist, and
yes,
we'll let you know when this article is out, and, keep up the great work, and, reach out to us whenever you have projects like the ones that your New Mexico, what is it, Impossible?
Yeah, Impossible is the name of the feature. Impossible.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm excited to help you publicize that. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I will definitely have my publicist contact you. Okay. Have
Gregg,
a great Sunday, Marc. A pleasure talking to you.
You as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye now.